What is up, you beautiful people? I am Rito, and in this video I'll be talking about GDPR, especially for Shopify dropshipping stores. Now, a lot of people following me have built out their dropshipping stores, and I wanted to bring this to your attention because GDPR gets into effect from 25th of May. So you need to be prepared because it doesn't apply to just the big companies, but it also applies to smaller retailers. Now, GDPR is basically General Data Protection Regulation. I won't go into the specifics of it. You've probably heard about it. It's about data protection for Europeans. So even if you don't sell in Europe, as long as your Shopify store is available for visitors in Europe to just open and browse through, even then the GDPR rules apply to you. Even if you don't advertise in Europe, the GDPR rules still apply to you because people can still open up your store in Europe and then actually make a purchase even if you're not advertising there, right? You need to be careful. You need to follow this sort of checklist that I've made, and I'll be revealing to you guys in this video the kind of steps you need to take to be GDPR compliant. Now, there's not a lot that you have to do, but there's still some things that you need to be careful about because the fines that they levy are huge. Now, the fines are especially built for the bigger companies like Google, Shopify as a company, and other companies out there who actually collect data. So they have to be extra careful, and they've been taking measures in order to be GDPR compliant for several weeks now. And many of them have actually set up their entire system so that they're now GDPR compliant, which actually what ends up doing is because your Shopify business and your dropshipping business uses all these tools like Shopify, like Facebook ads, like Google Analytics, and all these other tools, because these companies have made their softwares and systems compliant with GDPR. So this actually ends up benefiting you because you, when you're using those systems, you're using GDPR compliant systems. But still, there are a few things that you have to do as a small retailer, as a small dropshipper, just to be safe so that you don't fall into trouble. Now, I want to give a disclosure right now. This is by no means like a legal advice or something. Don't quote me if you fall into trouble by following these strategies. Now, I've read a lot on GDPR, and what I'm going to discuss in this video are the key steps that you have to take in order to be GDPR compliant. But here's the thing, each Shopify store is different. I don't know what apps you use and how you've built out your store. So the rules apply different for each store because it's just on the basis of what apps you use, how those apps communicate with each other, how they take the data of the visitor and use it in their systems. So you have to be very careful in that. Just do a search for GDPR. There are several blog posts and articles around this, but I'm going to be keeping this video especially for Shopify dropshipping stores and what you have to do. Now, the first thing you have to do is on all the pop-ups and forms that you have on your store where you collect a visitor's email address, below that form you need to have a checkbox which says, I agree to be subscribed to get updates, discounts, and offers from XYZ company. Now, this needs to be a checkbox that is unchecked. Alright, you have to make sure that that box is unchecked by default so that the visitor has to check that box and then hit the submit button to get subscribed to your email list. So make sure that that is done. If you're using an app for this, then you need to contact the app developer to make sure that they have set this option up so that if you use this, you are compliant. Now, the second thing that you have to do is update your privacy policy. Now, Shopify has updated the default privacy policy. So if you go to your settings and then go to checkout, you should be able to see a sample privacy policy that is generated. Click on it again. A new sample privacy policy will be generated, which is very much different from the one you had before. Now, there are some text inside quotes. Just go through that privacy policy so that you insert or remove whatever is required in that privacy policy and make it your own, and then copy that entire thing and paste it inside your privacy policy page also, so that both the checkout privacy policy page and your actual store privacy policy page matches, and that you have that new privacy policy that Shopify specifically created to be GDPR compliant. Now, in essence, what GDPR generally wants you to do is to be transparent with your visitors and your users who are using your store. So if you're using cookies, if you're using a user's data, it can be their name, their email address, their IP address, their cookies, whatever it is. If you're using any data that is personally identifiable to that particular user, you have to make sure that you have clearly explained how and why you're using that data. In order to do that, that privacy policy page actually explains quite a bit. You might have to make some other additions if you're using other apps to do that. That's why I recommend go through that entire privacy policy page. Make sure you mention any specific examples of cases where you're using a person's data. For example, if you're using Lucky Orange or Hotjar for tracking a visitor activity, that needs to be mentioned there. It's essentially about getting a visitor's permission for using their data and them having the option to opt out of it as well, so that they can actually ask you to be able to export their data and give it back to them. Now, because you're running on the Shopify platform, it has set up their system so that if a customer comes back to you and asks you to give them their data, Shopify has built up systems so that you can export the data and send it to them in a readable format. Now, the third thing that you have to do is make sure you get a person's consent for their cookies. Now, this is called a cookie cookie consent bar or a cookie bar that just displays on the bottom of your store. There are Shopify apps that help you set up this bar. Just search for EU cookie bar inside the Shopify store. You will find a couple of apps out there. Install one of them. What it basically does, it sets up a bar on the bottom of your store, which basically says something like, I understand that this website uses cookies, and then there's a link to learn more, and that links out to your privacy policy page, because inside the privacy policy page you will have information about how you use your cookies, and then there's going to be either a close button or an accept button, so that cookie bar keeps showing up on every single page until they click that close or accept button. Now the fourth thing that I recommend you do is go through all the apps that you've installed on your store. Contact each developer one by one. Now several of the apps that you use, apps like MailChimp, right? Any of the bigger companies by default have set up their practices so that they're GDPR compliant, so you won't have to contact them. But any of the smaller apps or private developers or any other smaller developers who have developed apps, you need to contact them personally just to make sure that they are GDPR compliant as well. You don't want to fall into trouble because it is your responsibility, because people are coming to your store and you are using that particular app, and if that app developer tends to share the data without a user's consent, you may fall into trouble. So you have to make sure that you contact each app developer so that they on their own are also GDPR compliant, so that actually helps bring all the goodwill back to you as well. Now there's nothing much to worry about. Just by following these 4 things, you should be safe. You shouldn't fall into any trouble, so it should be fine for you. But again, I don't want you to take this as some legal advice. Definitely do your own research, contact your own local lawyer just to find out how you can be even more GDPR compliant. The whole concept of GDPR is to be transparent and ethical with your users so that you respect a user's data and their privacy. And this is exactly what I teach you guys also, right? Ethical business and right way of doing business is always what works in the long term. Now in my case, I will be making all these changes by May 24th so that I'm compliant when GDPR hits on May 25th. As of uploading this video, you still have a few days to make those changes, so go for it. Be proactive about this. Stay safe, because the fines that they levy if you're not following the GDPR practices, even if you don't advertise in Europe and Europeans can still access your store, it is pretty huge, and I don't want you guys to fall into any trouble because of this. Now listen, if you know any people who are running their own dropshipping stores and businesses, make sure you share this video and send this link out to them, because they also need to know how to be GDPR compliant for their own Shopify dropshipping business. So come on, share this video. If you found value in this, give me the thumbs up right below. Make sure you subscribed and belled to the Flying Start online channel, and until next time, okay, ta-ta, bye-bye.